can see the topic 8 questions of estate planning, but if there's one in particular in your mind that you're hoping we discuss, now's the time to let me know that I make sure that we do discuss it.
All right, I think we'll get started. Thanks for coming today. For those of you who are here and those of you who are watching online, my name is Mark Nauman. I have the privilege of serving as chairman of the Board of Stewardship. One of the goals for the board this year is to encourage and assist our members in developing an estate plan. When I normally approach people on the subject of an estate plan, I generally hear a couple responses. One is, I don't have an estate. Well, then I ask them, do you have a home? Well, yeah. Do you have life insurance? Well, yeah. Do you have any kind of retirement fund, a 401k or what? Well, yeah. Oh, you have an estate, all right? And you need to plan for that, for when the Lord calls you home, that things are taken care of. The other response I'll hear is, yeah, I have a will. Oh, how long ago did you develop that? Well, 12, 15 years ago. Okay, you need to review that. But an estate plan is much more than that. And so in that end, to accomplish our goal, we're pleased to have with us Rick Kniezer from Synod. Rick is a gift planning counselor with the Synod. He's going to walk us through some of the basics of an estate plan. At the end, we'll let you know what the process is for you to follow to develop your own estate plan, and we'll take it from there. So, Rick, please.
Thank you, Mark. I was just telling Christy that you You hear me? Is that better? All right. So eight questions of estate planning, and this goes out to the people that are watching online as well. If there is a question that you have that you're hoping we cover today, either let me know here or for those online, if you can send in a comment, and Christy will get those to me. Is that correct? Well, that's how it'll work?
Yes.
Good.
Let me find the text number here.
So
So if you want to text in a question, you can text it to 262-374-5957. 262-374-5957.
So if anybody here have one right now, or you'll wait till you hear what you hear. Okay. So we're going to get started. 8 questions of estate planning, and this is a version of one of our counselors that has since retired did, except he called it the 8 errors, and I didn't like starting a presentation by telling people they did already have done 8 things wrong. So I kind of changed it a little bit to questions. So you may see a reference to an error, but hopefully I didn't miss anything. Why do an estate plan? Mark kind of talked about it, is witnessing your values. The Christian preamble, which is just a simple statement of faith. I'm going to take this off. A Christian preamble, which is a simple statement of faith that you can put into your will. It's not a required part of a will, but it offers you the opportunity to witness to people that may be there when your will is read. You can use it to provide words of comfort to your family or children, or words of instruction. Provide some guidance even after you're gone. So it does give you some opportunities. One of the primary things people think of is take care of my family. And for most people, that is the idea of having a will. But the last one, too, is one opportunity that you have is to, one more time, consider all the blessings that God has given you and ways that you can give back some of those blessings that God has given to you. And it could be to recognize the responsibilities God's given you by taking care of your family. It's a good act of a Christian steward. But it's also to consider the ministries that could benefit from those blessings God has given you. So there are different ways you can look at it from a Christian stewardship standpoint of the ministries that are important to you. You've got a Wisconsin Lutheran High School mask on. St. John's here, or the ministries of the Wells as well. So there are many different ways, and we'll talk about some of those different ways that you can make gifts based upon the way that you have been blessed by God and the responsibilities He's given you. So the first question for getting the owner. Mark talked about what's in an estate and who owns it, right? Think of the things that he mentioned that have been given to you. Your home, your family, life insurance policies, retirement accounts, investment accounts. Who owns it? God does. Your name might be on the statement that you get every quarter or the mortgage that you're paying on every month. But in reality, everything that we have are gifts from God. By grace, God supplies all our needs. Seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. And everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. I was able to sit in on the Bible class this morning on Job that Professor Braun is doing. And, much of what happens in Job is a person has truly been blessed by God, not just with wealth, but with a family, friends, honor, prestige, and yet it's all taken away from him, but eventually it's all restored as well. So it really is a good message of what God gives us and what we are to do with it, how we are to treat it. So, but keeping in focus that God is really the owner. We are just stewards, and hence the idea of Christian stewardship. God entrusts it to the task of management. Since we are not really the owners, we are the stewards, we have a responsibility to manage those gifts that God has given to us. Now it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him. So by the gifts that God has given us, how we use them, how we manage them, and how we take responsibility and care of them is all a testament to giving thanks back to God for what He's done for us. And this is where Christian stewardship kind of goes out a little bit farther than just the financial aspect of the gifts of God. Really, estate planning is a lot of it, like we talked about before, is taking care of the family that He's given to us. The parent's role doesn't end when their kids turn 18, right? I'm finding out in my personal circumstances, the role of a child doesn't start or doesn't really end either. I've got an 88-year-old mother that's in nursing care right now. And what was a parent's role is now fallen on the children to take that responsibility on. So Christian stewardship extends far beyond the financial aspects of what God has given to you to include family responsibilities as well. So bear with me just a second. Thank you. So first question, we've identified God owns it. We are merely stewards of what he has given to us. So let's talk about what those responsibilities are. All right, question number 2 then, are beneficiary designations coordinated with your estate plan? First of all, does everybody know what a beneficiary designation is? Any questions on that? If you have a life insurance policy, who gets the money when you die? That's the beneficiary designation. And life insurance policy, retirement accounts, investment accounts. When you filled out all that paperwork at the bank or the financial advisor's office, all those papers that you signed and filled out, well, one of those was, what happens with this when you die? For most people, who's on the first line? I was going to say, look next to you. That's probably a good idea. What about this next line? Children? Any other choices? Mark, you got an idea?
Church.
Your church? So it could be, so you're going to have a primary beneficiary designation of your spouse or children. Secondary might be children or ministries that are important to you. What does it mean, though? Is that coordinated with your estate plan? If you have a will and you have a beneficiary designation on a life insurance policy, which one takes precedence? I don't have a coin to flip, so it's... The beneficiary designation will take precedence. So your will may say, everything's going to my children. Beneficiary designation may say, primary to my spouse, secondary to St. John's. That document or that investment or retirement or life insurance policy, the money will be sent directly to St. John's. Whoever's managing your will, they'll never touch that money. So you want to make sure that what your will says and what your various beneficiary designations say are coordinated so that doesn't cause any confusion or opportunities for malfeasance. You know, oh wait, this says this, but maybe we can make it different. So you want to make sure that they are all coordinated to accomplish what your goals are, what the same thing is. This is where, Mark, this is one of the slides you kind of went through, is I've got a will, I'm done, right? But if that will just says everything goes to spouse or then to children, these are some of the different things that may have to be looked at closely to make sure that they are in coordination with the will. Your life insurance, annuities. What about the bottom one? Home. You can actually have it's called a transfer of deed on death, that when you die, your home goes to somebody specific. And so just like a beneficiary on a life insurance policy. With a will, with a beneficiary designation on all of these, that will keep that particular financial resource or asset out of probate. And probate is something that, you know, everybody sees as a dirty word, but all it means is that the management and distribution of those assets under probate you have court oversight on how it's done. A beneficiary designation is separate from that. Yes, Pastor?
So a beneficiary designation takes precedent over a will.
Yes. The question was, does the beneficiary designation take precedence over a will? Yes. And the biggest positive impact of that is that it keeps it out of probate. In Wisconsin, if your probatable assets are greater than $50,000, you have to go to probate, which means court oversight, probably going to have to hire an attorney to go through that for you. and it takes a longer time span.
If I have a will, do I still go through probate?
Yes. If a will basically is the instructions on how those assets are to be distributed, but if those assets are over $50,000, your will have to be go to probate. So if you think of these things, which one do you think most likely is going to be controlled by a will? Try the bottom one, the home. Because typically, when you take out a life insurance policy, you're going to put a beneficiary on it. When you open a retirement, an IRA account, you're going to put a beneficiary on it. Every one of those other things. But the home, not so much. And not only that, but in many cases, that home might be the most highest valued asset on this list. Yes, Scott?
Is it a mandatory trip to the court if none of the beneficiaries protests the distribution of the assets under the will?
You
The will will have an executor,
Correct?
and, you know, the house is more than $50,000, but if the executor complies with the instructions of the will and the beneficiaries are satisfied with those instructions, is probate still mandatory?
It is, if the assets are over $50,000, because how does the court know that nobody's contesting it until that it's published? So if the assets controlled by the will are over $50,000, you'll still have to go to probate. It may be quick, but you still will. So, okay? Yes?
What's the mechanism for putting a beneficiary designation on a home?
It's called a transfer of deed on trust, or transfer of deed on death, a TODD. It's basically it's a document that you would complete and file with the county, that county's register of deeds. Yeah. So just like you would register your ownership of the property, you're registering the transfer of ownership when you die. But you can do that ahead of time. So. No, that's true. You can't do it after you die, so you have to do it ahead of time. Correct. Good question, though. Any other questions, Pastor?
So then, if you are going to have your will updated, and you need to go to an attorney for that, that attorney will walk you through all of these things? And say,
Correct.
you gotta have this, and this, to make sure that your wishes are being, to convey what your wishes are.
Yeah. Yes. Mark?
Could you just repeat the question so that?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. So the last question was, if you want to get all these pieces done, when you get your will updated at the attorney, that they will go through these lists to make sure everything is taken care of. A good attorney will, yes.
So for example, an attorney would say, do you have a TODD, you know, or whatever that was, a transferring of your, of deed on death.
Mhm.
And if you say no, he will tell you, yes, you must get one of those, and this is what you must do, you must register it.
The question is will the attorney ask if you have a TODD on your property? And if not, the attorney, will he take care of it? I don't know. That's not something that's done 100% of the time. So if you're having your will updated, that would be a question or a one thing you would want to tell the attorney you want to have in place. And they can then draw up that TODD document and get it registered with the county. So if you're having your will updated, I would recommend that be done. And like everything else, that TODD will then take your home out of probate. So hopefully reducing your assets controlled by your will to under $50,000. Good questions. Thank you. Anything else? So, do I need guardian, trustees, and personal representative? First of all, do we all know what those all are? A guardian, what is a guardian's responsibility? Based upon the name, what do you think it is? Care for minors, not necessarily, not just minors. Special needs for anybody that might require needs even after they're adult. Could be a parent. What's the difference between guardian and trustee? The guardian provides, Scott?
Trustee's responsibility is to the estate, and guardian's responsibility is to the individual they are guarding.
Basically, the trustee is responsible for the money. The guardian is responsible for physical care. In many cases, that's going to be the same person, but it does not have to be. So you can have one person that's going to provide physical care of your children or a family member, sibling, adult, but the trustee will manage the financial piece of it to make sure that it's used appropriately. Example, this happened a few years ago in Washington County. A husband and wife were on the way home from an event, died in a car accident, left 5 kids at home. As of 2 years after the accident, or more than a year after the accident, the case was still being decided in the courts. They did not have a will, and the 2 sets of grandparents were facing off against each other in court to be the guardian and trustee for those 5 children. The main reason, not the main reason, I mean, they're both grandparents of those children, but part of what was involved with the estate of that couple was valued at about $2 million. So physical responsibility for the 5 kids, but also financial responsibility for $2 million of assets that's going to be used to take care of those 5 children. So big responsibility between what the guardian's responsible for, the trustee is responsible. What is a personal representative? There's another word for it, more old-time word, but executor. And what that person is responsible for is, what does your will say? Making sure that that is taken care of. That what your instructions are in your will is taken care of. So again, large responsibility, but the personal representative, once the details of the will are done, their responsibility is done. Responsibility for a guardian trustee can go on for many years, depending on how old the children are and what the terms of that trust are. You know, some of the trusts that we're going to talk about may have a 20-year lifetime that trustee is going to be responsible for 20 years. So as you choose who you want to serve in these roles, keep in mind, what are you asking that person to do? I did meet with a couple once that they finally, they were good friends of ours. They finally sat down and said, okay, now we're ready to talk. And I asked, what determined that now being the correct time? Our youngest child turned 21. Okay, why that? We didn't want to have to pick any of our siblings to take care of our kids, so they just chose not to do it. Now, I don't want to discuss their reasoning or logic for that, but I think there are better things to be considered. So, but we did write up a plan now that the kids were 21. And I will say that trustee doesn't have to end at 21. You can have a trust that goes beyond the age of your children if you want it to. And we'll talk about more when we get into trusts. Have I planned for incapacity? So when we're talking about a personal representative, that responsibility starts when you die. But what happens if you've lived a good long life, but you're no longer able to make decisions for yourself, or you cannot physically care for yourself? Do you have powers of attorney? A durable power of attorney is for financial purposes. Power of attorney for health care is for medical reasons. I mentioned before about my mom. My mom's 88 years old, and my brother and I share power of attorney responsibilities for medical and financial purposes. I handle the financial piece, he handles the medical, because she's at a point now that it's not meaningful or appropriate for her to be making decisions on her own. And so a power of attorney authorizes someone else to serve in your behalf. Even if you don't get a will, I strongly, strongly encourage that you have medical and a financial power of attorney for each other, for your adult, make sure your adult children have it, because according to the state, your role as a parent ends at 18. They are now a legal adult. You can no longer make a decision on their behalf without a power of attorney form. And even though if you're married, you don't have that legal authority for your spouse without a power of attorney. Not quite 2 years ago, I was driving home from an appointment in the afternoon, driving down I-43, heading towards my Highway 164 exit, and suddenly had a severe problems in that my eyes stopped working together. I had one eye that was looking straight forward and one that was looking over here. And if I looked that way, this one would stop this way and I'd be looking over there. Essentially, I had a mini stroke driving down the freeway at 70 miles an hour. I was able to pull over, and I don't recommend this to anybody, but I'm a man. So what I do? Cover one eye. And was able to get home. My wife immediately put me back in the car, went back the same way to Moreland Reserve, and they put me through the stroke protocol. But there were many things that I was in no condition to be able to answer for myself or make decisions. My wife was there, was able to make decisions on my behalf. So don't say it's not going to happen to you, because it happened to me. You know, it can happen, and it does more often than you would think. So very, very, very important. If nothing else, take this away from this presentation this morning. What happens if I have no estate planning documents? You don't have a will. You might have your beneficiary designations, but what happens? Who decides? Now, who of us here wants the judge to decide what happens with the rest of our assets? Or who's going to take care of our children? Or who's going to take care of adults that are in our care? If you're comfortable with the state making those decisions, you're done. You have an estate plan. It's handed over to a judge. But that also means that in terms of gifts to ministry, that's not going to happen. They have specific, strict guidelines on where it's going to go. Primarily, it's going to go to family. Now, how far down the ladder it goes, that depends. But so, if you're comfortable with that, you can leave now, because you already have your estate plan in place. The bond may be assessed, and that's just going to be additional cost involved in that process. So, 6, do I need to address any special circumstances? We've talked about minors, special needs. What about the last spendthrifts? Well-to-do. and this is where trusts might get involved, is do you have a family member that you would like to include in your estate plan, but man, they can go through money awfully quick. So what you can do is structure your estate plan so that you can provide a level of control even after you're gone. May not be able to write a TODD after you die, but you can still control how your money gets spent in some ways. I worked with a couple who had in their will, their children were in their upper 40s, and they wrote in their will that they wanted everything to go into a trust to pay out to their children over a period of time. And I asked them why, but it ended when the kids turned 55. Asked, what do you expect to change from 49 to 55 that you want it to go into a trust? And they said, it's just what we want to do. It's a message we want to send. Okay, we did that. But, you know, whether it's a spendthrift or well-to-do, you can provide a level of control that provides for a long period of time resources without giving them the authority, without the trustees' approval on how they spend the money. So, again, a level of control.
That doesn't apply to life insurance, right?
Life insurance, no. Well, you can have life insurance go into a trust, the proceeds from the life insurance. But you have to designate that on the beneficiary designation then. So, yes. 7, have I made provisions for first fruit giving? And this is where, as Christians, maybe our estate planning will differ from when you know, if you talk to just somebody in the finance world. Is part of our reasons for estate planning is the opportunity to support the ministries that are important to us. St. John's, might be Wisconsin Lutheran High School, my congregation, Mount Calvary in Waukesha. My wife is active in Lutherans for Life. The missions or the ministries of the Synod, whether it's mission work, whether it's ministerial education, congregational services, whatever it might be, whatever the ministries are important to you, there are different ways you can structure that support based upon what your circumstances are. And we can talk about that, you know, when we meet individually, because what's good for Scott might not be what's good for Mark or what's good for me. So I will help you accomplish what your goals are. People ask, how much should I give? That's a personal decision. You know, your circumstances might be different from mine. An example could be that my parents had a huge estate, gave it to their grandchildren, my children. So maybe there's no responsibility. I don't have a financial responsibility to take care of my kids, so I can generate more towards ministry if I want to. Somebody else might have a strong responsibility need that their Christian stewardship directs them to take care of those gifts or those responsibilities. So different circumstances. One option is look at Jesus as a member of your family. You know, I have 3 kids in Jesus. You know, that's my estate plan. That's how it's going to be divided up. But again, your personal circumstances will dictate what's good for you. Do you want to take that responsibility as part of your estate plan, or do you want your children to take it on? You know, some people might just give their estate to their children in equal shares and encourage them to make gifts that are important to their ministries. That's another opportunity. But again, you know, how would you approach that with your children so that they're aware of what your expectations are? There's a booklet in the folder you have called Different Ways to Make Planned Gifts. What we're going to start off is just some of the assets, and from an estate planning standpoint, talking a little bit about it. Different gifts or different assets have a different impact depending on what you do with them. There are certain gifts that you can give to your family members, your children, your siblings, that have absolutely no tax impact. Cash, or if you're talking, bank accounts, checking accounts, savings account, money market funds, things like that. You give those to your children, they get 100% of it. If you give it to ministries, they get 100% of it. There is no tax impact of them getting this financial benefit. Okay, so when you're talking about estate plans, you want to focus on, number one, taking care of family, and number two, taking care of ministries. What don't you want to take care of? Uncle Sam? That one member of the family that, seems to get into everything, Uncle Sam. Not that you can't. I mean, if you want to, you can. It's not wrong, but the government, the tax laws do give you some benefits that you can take advantage of so that more goes to family and ministry and less goes to government. So different assets have different responsibilities. Cash and very liquid assets like that, 100% to where you want it to go to. Yes, Scott?
The lawyers that potentially we work with, are they able to suggest that, well, maybe if you were to take something as cash donations at this point in your life before you die,
We'll talk, actually.
break them off, that's coming?
Yeah, the question is with cash, things like that, there are things where you can take advantage of to make gifts before you die. And we're going to talk about that in some ways you can, with the gifts God's given you, you can make those gifts happen before you die so that you can see the benefit of what it's being done. And that's, one of the things with endowment fund here at St. John's is, wouldn't it be great to make gifts now while you can see, and then how that money is used to support the ministry at St. John's. I don't know if you heard about it, but it was just announced this past week. I don't know how public this has become, but the ECW campaign at Martin Luther College, Equipping Christian Witnesses, it was just announced either Thursday or Friday that a large gift was made by a family to pay for the athletic facility. So that piece of the Equipping Christian Witnesses campaign is now fully funded. And that was not from an estate, that was from a couple that made that gift. So that's an example where a gift can happen while you're still alive because of the resources that you have and the kind of things you have. So, but cash is one of those, 100% to where you want it to go will go there. Appreciated assets, there's a little more flexibility here. This would be like if you owned stock. If you, stock or money market funds, things like that, investment accounts, if you give that to children, they get 100% of it. The nice thing about it is they get the appreciated value as their basis. So if you had stock that you bought at $10,000 is now worth $100,000, and it's directed, the beneficiary is directed to your children at death, their value, their basis is $100,000 on that. So if they turn around and sell it right away, they get to keep 100% of that. Now, what you can also do is, to where you're going, Scott, if you give that, if you would turn around and sell that while you own it, you would have $90,000 in capital gains that you'd have to pay tax on. Let's say you wanted to make a gift like that to build that something, or a gift here to the endowment fund at St. John's. You could sell that stock and you'd have $100,000, but you're also going to have a tax bill on $90,000. What you can do is give the stock directly to the church. The church then turns around and sells it. they get $100,000, they have no tax bill. You get a $100,000 tax deduction with no capital gains. So significant change in tax benefits based upon how you handled that gift to your church. So different kinds of benefit unappreciated assets. Retirement plans, one of the things that we can now do with our retirement plans is gift directly from them. Well, I'm going to qualify that. If you have an IRA and you're over the age of 70 and a half, don't know why they picked 70 and a half, not 70 or 71, but that's it. You can make what's called a qualified charitable distribution from your IRA to a ministry of your choice. It qualifies for your required minimum distribution. And for those of you who are drawing on your retirement accounts, this all makes sense to you. Maybe somebody else, it doesn't quite as much. But it qualifies as your required minimum distribution, but it doesn't qualify as income. You don't have to, there's no income on it, or you don't have to treat it as income. So you can make gifts directly from your IRA to a qualified ministry. Unfortunately, it does not work on a 401k or a 403b. So, there are things you have to take care of in order to accomplish that. But retirement plans, the other thing about a retirement plan is if you give it to your children, they used to be able to spread it out over their remaining lifetime. So if your children are 40 years old, they may not have to pay taxes on that for 40 years or 30 years when they retire. The laws just changed within the last couple of years. They have to now take that over a 10-year period. And if they start at year 7, they have to take it over that remaining 3 years. So 10 years after they inherit, they have to have completely withdrawn it and paid the taxes on it. It was done so that the government could get all those deferred tax dollars on retirement accounts and 401ks, that the government would get their tax benefits sooner. So the alternative, if you're going to give a gift to ministry, retirement accounts is where you want to do it from. Because I can pretty much guarantee St. John's hasn't paid any income tax over the last 10 years. True? So make a gift to ministries, that tax bill goes away. Give it to your children, it's compressed into a 10-year period. And think about it when, I'll use my circumstances. My mom's 88 years old. When she dies, her retirement accounts are going to get distributed to children and ministries. But my portion is, I'm still working now, right? And for some of you, if you're in your 50s or 60s, you might be at your maximum earnings, the most you're going to be making during your career right now. And now you tack on whatever you're getting from your parents in their retirement accounts on top of your earnings. You're going to be paying at a very much higher tax rate than you do normally. So it's probably the worst time to inherit retirement assets. So consider that instead, using that for your gifting to ministries. So again, removing Uncle Sam from the equation and structuring it so that the majority of your estate plan is going to go to where you really want it to. And going back, that's where beneficiary designation can help a lot, because you can direct certain assets to certain aspects of your estate plan. Life insurance is another one of those assets that goes 100% to where you want it to go. So if you have a $100,000 life insurance policy and it's going to your 2 children or to your spouse, they will get $100,000. It's not a taxable event. So some people, I don't necessarily recommend this. Some people then think, oh, well, what I could do is take out a life insurance policy on myself, have the church named as the beneficiary of it. Well, what if you live for another 30 years? You're going to be paying money for the premiums on that policy. That 30 year won't benefit the ministries you want until 30 years from now. What you could do instead is just give the money each year. So there are some things you can do. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing to do. So again, that's where you want to talk to your financial advisor about what your goals are and what you want to accomplish. I mentioned this before, IRA charitable distributions. You're eligible at 70 and a half. You can direct it from an IRA, but not a 401k or a 403b for you called workers. So consider these gifts as part of your estate plan going to funding your gifts to ministry. A charitable gift annuity is a way that you can make a gift to a ministry, but at the same time set up a income stream for yourself. So you set up an annuity, and basically it can pay your money for as long as you live. Whether you live another year or whether you live to 90, that annuity will continue to make a fixed payment amount to yourself. Anything left when you die, if there's anything left in the annuity, you can direct that to go to a ministry of your choice. And for a 75-year-old, if they took it out, whatever they put into it, they would get 6% each year for life. 71% is tax-free for 12 years, 45% would be a charitable deduction up front. So, again, depending on your circumstances, this may be a possible option. Yes?
So for the 71% of income is tax-free for 12 years, and after that you're paying tax on it?
Correct. Because if you think about it, that money is sitting in an account earning interest and, appreciating. And basically what it is, after 12 years, you're now drawing on that appreciation of the asset. So the government still gets their piece of it.
On whatever the total of the remaining asset is.
Yeah. Yeah. So not whatever's remaining asset, you're getting taxed just on what you're drawing, what you're getting paid. A donor advised fund, this is for where if you have a circumstance where maybe you came into a large amount of money and you need a large tax deduction, you can put the money into a donor advised fund, take the tax deduction for 100% of it, and then over the following years, make distributions from that to ministries that are important to you. Circumstances somebody might be interested in this is you got a huge year-end bonus. And it's like, man, I'm going to get slammed on taxes on this. Set up a donor advised fund now, and then you can decide later on what ministries you want it to go to, and over a period of time. And then you can add to that and, make distributions in following years. Another circumstance where somebody might want to do this if they had a business and they sold a business and they're looking at a large gain, they might use something like this to offset the taxes. So tax benefits for a donor advised fund. A will or a trust? What's your pleasure? You want a will or you want a trust? What would be some deciding factors choosing between one or two?
Minor children.
Your children? How much control? Pardon?
Minors especially.
Minors, definitely a trust. How much control do you want to have after you die? The more control you want, the more likely you might choose a trust. The size of the estate. If your estate is $5 million, your son's 23 years old, single, you want to just give it to him? You might have a vote on that. Yeah, and that's where it comes to you want to provide some control or guidance so that now there's a trustee in place that's going to say, you really need the Ferrari or do you want the Ford? So, Scott. The ability to avoid probate is another good example, is that funds going into a trust do avoid probate. If it's just being controlled by your will, if it's over $50,000, it's not. Another good point. So with a will, you can have the will do percentages, that I've got two children or two children in Jesus, 1/3 to each of my children, 1/3 to ministries. You can also have something in your will that says specific assets. The family vacation cottage goes to this child because they want to use it a lot, but the other 3 don't want it. So we'll send something different to them. So it can be specific, can be a percentage. Residual bequest could be, I want this to be used, the benefit of this to go to let's say you have stock. I want the dividends from this stock to go to ministries for 10 years, and after that it gets liquidated and split up between the children. Or a contingent bequest. Goes to my wife first. If my wife's predeceased me, then it goes to my children. So contingent based upon a set of circumstance. So those are all different things you can build into your will or your trust. The payable on death or transfer on death. We talked about property that also can apply to bank accounts. Some of these, if it's a bank account, you go to the bank. They have their specific forms. You don't need, it avoids probate. You don't need an attorney. You don't need a will. No cost to do it. Basically, and if you want to, it's changeable. You can always just fill out a new form and change it. And you can direct it to family or charity. So payable on death, transfer on death is just like a beneficiary designation. Very simple, very cost effective, in that it really doesn't cost anything, but it's very powerful in that it removes it from the will and it removes it from your probate. Yes? Thank you. A charitable remainder trust. So if the question was, do you want a will or do you want a trust? Well, here, what are the different options as far as a trust? And like I said before, transfer appreciated assets. If you have, a large amount of stock that's appreciated quite a bit, put it into a trust. The trust can sell the assets, you diversify what you have, no capital gains. 5%, a trust will typically, you can have it set up to pay typically 5% per year to the beneficiaries of the trust. An example, elderly couple have 13 grandchildren. And they have a very, I'll say, significant retirement account. They can put that into a trust and pay out the 5% to their 13 grandchildren that they share in that 5% for a period of 20 years. And then at the end of 20 years, they can direct whatever's left in the trust, and it can be the original principal plus any appreciated assets, if it grew more than 5%, would be directed to the ministries of their choice, the grandparents that set it up. So circumstance where that might be good is if you have children that are minors and you're going to send them a few $1,000s a month or a year, but then at the end of the 20 years, they're now out there on their own, earning their own careers, things like that, and then the money will go to the ministries that the grandparents wanted to support originally. The one shortfall of that, ministries have to wait 20 years. So the grandparents may not be able to see the benefits of those gifts being distributed. It does have a charitable deduction attached to it because there's a gift at the back end. So a legacy charitable remainder trust, slightly different variation of that, but the money goes into the trust while you're still alive. You're living off the trust, You can then direct it to go to the benefit of somebody when you die, but then at the same time, the residual can go to areas of ministry. So the benefits of a trust, number one, are assets are removed from probate. It gives you control over the asset in that you're going to dictate how it's spent and distributed. You can pick people who you want to be in charge of it. And the tax implications as well, because there's a charitable gift involved, so there's a gift deduction involved with that. And it's a way to, manage larger assets. Trusts are not for everybody. I'll say that. A single person whose intent is, when I die, it's going to go to ministries or it's going to go to my two children or nieces, and I'm just going to pay it out. So it's very clean, very short. I don't have a whole lot of assets. Just pay it out, okay? Or take care of it by beneficiary designation. There's no need for a trust. But for someone who has a complicated estate plan, maybe a trust is the appropriate asset to go to. That'll be based upon the conversations that we have as we go through your circumstances. We'll determine whether a trust would be appropriate or not. Once that's decided, the attorneys are able to draw up your trust documents, they can draw up your will, they can draw up your powers of attorney. But it's based upon what you want, what your goals are for your estate plan. An endowment fund, I'll use St. John's as an example. You have an endowment fund. I don't know how that's used for ministry purposes right now. Is that decided each year? 4%? Okay. I've had some congregations, they actually have a committee that each year takes recommendations from the entire church body, and then that committee decides how the money gets distributed. Other ones churches have, like you do, a specific distribution plan each year. It might be towards general fund, it might be towards tuition assistance, it could be towards funding an ministry outside their community. So, but the benefit of endowment fund is that those funds earn money each year, and the earnings, or a specified percent, 4%, is used each year. The principal typically goes on for, in theory, perpetuity, or till the end of time. But it can provide gifts to support ministry for a long period of time. So the choices you would have if you wanted to do that, there are existing endowment funds, St. John's as an example, that you can give to. If you want to decide something different, you can set up your own endowment fund. And you can encourage other people to donate to your endowment fund based upon the guidelines that are set up in the fund documents. Like all the ministerial ed schools have endowment funds. Missions has endowment funds under Synod's world. And then we have a general operating endowment fund as well. St. John's has it, but that's up to the person. They can either give to an existing endowment fund or set up their own. Last question, have I considered all the important tax issues? We've talked about the deferred income tax on retirement accounts, that there is a tax bill that comes with that money, unless it's given to an area of ministry. Because ministries don't pay income taxes, that tax bill goes away. If it's given to your children, they will have to pay that tax bill depending on what current law, which could change at any point in time. But they could be responsible for that at some point in time. The federal estate tax, in years past, it was it was as low as, from I recall, $500,000. So if your estate was in excess of $500,000, you're going to pay an estate tax on that. That number is now 11 million. So if your estate's more than $11 million, you might have to be concerned about that. That's for a single person, 22 and change for a couple. There are some states, Wisconsin thankfully is not one of them, that might have something called an inheritance tax. If your parents live in Iowa, as an example, and they include you as a beneficiary of their estate, be prepared. There is an inheritance tax, and it's something like 7%, I think. So, depending on, where your relatives, parents or siblings are, be prepared that that might come into play. So, and as far as I know, the Iowa one, there's no escaping it. If you got money in an estate, you're going to pay on it. So, any other questions? So now what? Okay. I've had a lot of head shaking, a lot of scratching. Oh, wow. Questionable looks. Like, If you would like some assistance in reviewing your estate plan, if you have one, setting one up if you don't, if you just need the name of an attorney, I can provide a list of attorneys that in most cases are WELS members. In all cases, they are estate planning professionals, and they can help you. We also do keep a list of financial advisors that, again, in most cases are WELS members, but in all cases are professional that have either we have worked with or have been recommended to us by other members. But I would be happy to meet with you to discuss your personal circumstances. What is it you need now? And what you need maybe more longer term. There is no cost or obligation for my assistance. This is a service, a ministry provided by the WELS to its members and congregations. So if we meet once, if we meet 5 times, it's not going to cost you anything. Once you go to the attorney, then depending on what you need from them, you'll have to pay for that. If it's important for you to find a way to say thank you, Jesus, whether it's setting up a plan that takes care of family or takes care of ministries, both, whatever it is, I would be more than happy to assist you in those plans. Dollar amount doesn't matter. I have some of the people that I have worked with have had very minimal estates, but it's been a joy to work with them because of the attitude they brought into the process. So, for you, those of you who have adult children, if nothing else, you're like, I know my kids don't have a power of attorney, I can send you the link. Christian Life Resources has a very good medical power of attorney. You fill out the form, get it completed, absolutely no cost. State of Wisconsin, I use their financial power of attorney, also at no cost. So if nothing else, you don't want to do anything right now, but you don't have powers of attorney, let me know. I'll send you the links to the 2 documents, get it filled out. The medical power of attorney requires 2 non-blood relative, non-medical provider witnesses, not a notary. The financial one requires a notary, but medical doesn't. I encourage people, buy a bottle of wine. Well, kind of tough now because you can't invite people over to your home. But buy a bottle of wine, invite the neighbors, have copies for them to fill out that you'll sign for them, they'll sign for you, and sit at tables far apart and have a glass of wine together. So, any questions? Christy, anything online? Okay. If nothing else, the feedback form that's in your folder, if you could please provide that, it'd be very helpful to me. With the contact information, if you would include just a note of what your preference is as far as email, phone call, paper mail, that would be helpful as well. So what is best for your goals? Is now the time for you to get a plan in place? Or is now the time to review it, or the plans that you might have? And one thing to consider is what will be your legacy. So here's, again, what my role is. I'm not a tax advisor. I'm not an attorney. I know enough to be dangerous, more than if nothing else. But I'd be more than happy to help you set up plans for your family. And how soul satisfying it would be able to see I've put my house in order. And with that, we're at 1 o'clock, so thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you. We've set up on our website some openings for having that preliminary meeting with Rick, whether it's by Zoom or in person. We'll be sending out a link to that. That's on our website to you. And then you can simply go in there, say, this day, this time works for me. Rick has availability then, and that'll at least get the process started. We'll be also including this in upcoming news and notes with that link. It was in there this morning, I saw. So, again, the encouragement is to do this yesterday, all right? You want to give us some thought, but you do want to move quickly on it to make sure it's done. I can just add one thing, that when my wife and I went through this process and had it completed, there is this contentment knowing that all these nagging questions we've had, we've gone through it, we've prayed about it, and now it's resolved. And when God calls us home, there shouldn't be any confusion. I'm sure there'll be a lot of sorrow, but no confusion. So, again, Rick, we want to thank you very much for your time and your information, and God's blessings.
One thing I do want to add, if you look at the times that are available that have been set up, if you look at the times that are available on the sign-up sheet, and they don't work for you, don't let that be a discouragement not to do it. You can contact me. I do this year-round. I'm not doing a whole lot of presentations like this, so it's not like my time is very restricted. So if those times don't work for you, please give me a call, contact me, let me know. I'll update Mark and the stewardship committee that you have contacted me as well. So this is very much a partnership between our Ministry of Christian Giving and St. John's Stewardship Committee. And we're looking forward to working with this and serving the members of St. John's. So thank you very much for having me again. Thanks, Mark.